You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of the Fezcast. It is Sunday night and we have Alex and David Loxham here who have all hightailed it home from a very cold and windy Stonex, which we'll get to later. But first off, last week I wrongly stated that the only outstanding transfer rumour yet to be resolved was that of Elliot Daly. And in fact there is also Ivan Van Zyl and Gareth Simpson. And I think with the news of the signing from Saints of Tom James, we can be pretty sure that both of those will be on their way. In particular, the Jungle Drums are beating very loudly that Ivan Van Zyl is going back to South Africa and the Sharks. I don't know much about Tom James. David, do you?
Yes, a bit. Let's start off. Gareth Simpson is a player I think has been criminally underused and is an outstanding player. And I don't believe he's had the chance to prove it. Now, Tom James is cut from very similar cloth. He's solid, he's reliable, but he scores loads of tries. If you look at the reaction to the Northampton supporters to losing him, you'll realise what a good player he is. There was one sort of wiseacre who said, oh, Saracens are desperate, they're going for a 32-year-old, the fourth choice scrum half, whatever else. That's total rubbish. I don't suppose that Saints fan, if it is a Saints fan, was complaining when he was actually a significant part of them winning the Premiership only a couple of years ago. So Tom's played over 100 games for them. He scored 119 points. The bloke is just what you want if you're looking for a support player. If it was a dice throw between him and Charlie currently, it would be very difficult to choose between the two. So it's not a case where we think Charlie's miles ahead on this particular case. This is someone who can not only give him a good run for his money or even get ahead of him, it's someone that he can learn from. So I'd say that Tom James is an outstanding signing.
And obviously Charlie Bracken, we're hoping, carries on the pretty rapid ascent and improvement that we've seen from him before he got injured this season.
It's important that there are more experienced players coming in that he can learn from. And actually, it's all good and well having the talent that he has, but actually training day in, day out with experienced players will only make him a better player.
And new rumours have started that Samson Adeyemi will be signing for Newcastle, where he's currently on loan. I find it a bit of a shame because it wasn't that long ago he was the best thing since sliced bread, according to Mark McCall, but Rob Webber has brought in two players from Jersey who've extended, James Hadfield and Ian Clark. So I think Samson Adeyemi would be a little bit silly not to look elsewhere.
Is he a better player than any of those four, in my opinion? Is he better than Jamie George or Theo Dan or James Hadfield or Ian Clark? I'd say no, actually. So with all due respect to Samson, it might be a good career move for him.
And he hasn't had much chance to really prove that since he burst on the scene because he's had a pretty rough injury record, hasn't he? I think that is all of the transfer rumours. Probably over the coming week we'll discover another one to add to it. But we've had a good time of it recently. We talked last week about the massive re-signing, which was Rhys Carey. And there was an absolutely brilliant interview on the BBC with him before the Wales-Italy game, where he was talking about the hard time that he's had with Wales over recent years, both because Wales have been absolutely rubbish and also because there were coaches there who didn't appreciate him. And one of the quotes, which I think I've almost got right here, was that in all that time, I just couldn't wait to get back to Sarries and play some good rugby. That makes your heart swell, doesn't it?
Yeah, And we want players that want to play for the club and enjoy playing for the club. And actually, that's what's going to get the best out of them and hopefully make Saracens successful. So the fact you've got players saying, actually, when I wasn't doing well internationally, when I wasn't being picked, I just wanted to play for my club, means a lot.
Me in particular didn't need to be so worried about him going elsewhere because he talked about how good Saracens have been for him.
Well, when he came the first time, I think we got on his back a bit and he was soon gone. He was soon gone back to Cardiff. This time, Wales got on his back. So he came to Saracens again. And this time, I think he was treated very differently. And Alex has summed that up beautifully there, because I've said to a few people, he needs to enjoy his rugby. He's that sort. And I spoke to Matt Edwards, who's a great Wales fan. He agreed with that. So, not only does he need to play rugby with a smile on his face, he's currently playing rugby with a smile on his face. And when he's free to express himself and he's not being got at, look what you get. I mean, I don't think Sarri's got it right the first time. I just think they have the second time. And I think the Welsh setup helped us in that respect.
We were all hoping there was going to be another wonder try this week, which didn't come. But the way that he took down a world-class player like Menoncello and got his hands there and forced a turnover penalty. And again, as David was saying, the smile on his face and the love, if you like, of all the teammates coming to him. It's just great to see.
That's when you can tell, like, a player's good, is when their teammates especially call them out and showcase them, because that sometimes, especially if they're not scoring tries or they're not making great runs, that's the work that goes unappreciated sometimes by the crowd. But actually, you can see that he's such an integral part now to that Wales team as well as to the Saracen side. And actually, he's starting to get appreciated for his work a lot more now.
He's really a world-class player. And was it coincidence, do you think, David, that the minute he went off, Wales conceded a try and got a yellow card?
No, I think he's really that important at the moment. I mean, he's more so important to Wales than he is even to Saracens, and he's plenty important to us. The whole thing about it is, once people stopped worrying about his weight and started looking at what he can actually do, which is a heck of a lot. I mean, the bloke is a great all-round ball player, and he's proved himself. But we never saw anything like that from him when he first came. The trouble is, the fat boy jibes got to him a little bit. And now he's now a jolly boy who's expressing himself in a happy way and showing everybody what he's got. And I'm waiting to see what he does next. I mean, he'll probably actually chip and chase next. There's going to be something else, isn't there?
You never know, do you? And he's just become a folk hero all over, and especially to the Welsh. I mean, the ovation that he got as he came off was just fantastic. And we are going to have to try and match that.
People can see now what he's done on the international stage. That's going to help him in a Saracens shirt in terms of just the confidence saying, well, if I can go and do that internationally, then I can come do that at Saracens. And actually it provides another option for us. And actually the opposition are focused on, we've got to stop Rhys Carey from getting the ball. Then actually it leads us options elsewhere on the pitch.
Totally. And what about England? I mean, are England Saracens in disguise, David? And what I mean by that is that, for 2 weeks in a row, they were inconsistent, didn't really look like they were there. Bit like us playing against Glasgow, you might say. And then maybe it's the French that bring it out in us, but then they turn up and play like that on Saturday. A bit like the way we played against Toulouse, suddenly looking like a different team.
Yeah, they probably are Saracens in disguise, but they can't be totally, because the Saracens contingent looks totally gutted about being beaten at the last minute, when actually they should be used to that by now. So, no, I don't think they're totally Saracens in disguise, but yeah, there's plenty of similarities to pick from. They didn't get it all right in the early part of the game either, did they? They sort of grew into that game and started to play like I think one of the previous times I came on, I said that particular collection of players who were picked at that time are a lot better than they're actually performing. Now, this is a slightly different collection of players, but that collection of players with half an ounce of cohesion and decent preparation should be very good. And this time they actually were.
And that doesn't sound like Saracens, does it? I mean, how many times have we looked at the team sheet and thought, that looks like a good team, that team should do well, and then they don't?
To lose a part, yeah.
It's that inconsistency. Steve Borthwick's getting it in the neck, and he's bound to, but who knows? I mean, one of the theories going about is that he has been too prescriptive in previous weeks, forcing us to kick the ball away and give possession away, which it looks like in modern international rugby, you just can't do. Sean Edwards was being interviewed after the France game, and they were asking him, are you disappointed to see a team where you're the defence coach conceding so many tries? And he said, that is rugby now. A few years ago, you could stop people scoring. You can't stop them scoring now. He said, I'm not disappointed because England are really good defensively and they conceded more tries than we did. And it was a fantastic, the whole weekend, the whole day, the whole Saturday was a fantastic advert for rugby. And it's just great that it was on free-to-air TV, ITV at prime time on a Saturday night. And by the way, I haven't heard anybody complaining about the adverts anymore.
People at the start were very much like, oh, this is something different, we don't like it. But actually, yes, it takes away a bit from the game. But if that's what, ITV feel they need to do in order to sustain their coverage and keep it accessible to everyone on free-to-air TV, then that's not a bad thing, then rather than stopping it from going behind paywalls where it's not as accessible to people at a time when we're trying to bring more fans into the game.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I suspect the ads will get more plentiful. And in fact, they've been, even in football matches on foreign TV for years now. Totally, as you say, if that's what it takes to get rugby out from behind a paywall, it absolutely needs to be done. And we'll get used to it, as we seem to have. So, shall we take a break there? And we'll be back to discuss the women.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome back, everyone. And as I said, it was a cold and windy day at StoneX, where typically, one of those really typical days where the wind couldn't make its mind up which way it wanted to blow. And Saracens lost a tight game by one unconverted try. But I, for one, am not too disheartened because Saracens won't, I believe, have to overcome the same obstacles when probably, fingers crossed, they meet Gloucester in the final. And just running through those obstacles. Number one, a really dominant Gloucester scrum that they really went at time and time again with a strategy to get players yellow carded, I believe, because they were that dominant, so you can't blame them. But Saracens eventually got to grips with that scrum.
Okay, I think I might pour cold water on that. I thought Maud Muir, who's a player I enormously admire, by the way, and a personality I really like, I thought she was illegal all of the first half. And I'm not alone in that. I will say at this point, just to get it out of the way, it's a good job Jez isn't on tonight because some of his comments during the game were fairly extreme. But on this particular point, I agreed with him. Now, I was the wrong side, and I could see from a fair distance away and from the wrong side that she wasn't legal. And for some reason, the touch judges mainly weren't picking it up. And the fact is, if you let a good player like Maud Muir get away with something, she'll get away with it all afternoon. And it was only eventually, I think, did you notice that we got to grips with it after half time?
Yes.
You don't think someone might have had a word, do you?
Very interesting. Item number 4 on my list of obstacles I hope we won't have to meet again is the referee, and we will be discussing that. But I'm not a very technical rugby watcher at all, and I don't tend to see those things. But that is a very interesting point. It was after the half-time that suddenly we seemed to be holding them solid, even when it was their put in.
Don't know whether Liz Craig coming on helped with the fact that Mormua didn't know her as well. She obviously plays with Kelsey at England. They had numerous scrums in training against each other. So I don't know whether having Liz Craig come on for that yellow card for Kelsey Clifford helped a bit. But, you know, whatever we did at half-time clearly worked, because actually we started to be able to hold our own in the scrum a bit more and stop giving away quite so many penalties there.
Yeah, we definitely got on top of that. So hopefully that's an obstacle. If it was a player being illegal, that we won't have to cope with that again. I also, number 2, I don't believe our passing game will be that error-strewn again.
You said it yourself, there was a nip in the air, and Gloucester put a lot of ball on the floor as well. I think it was just cold fingers, to be quite honest. And there was a lot of ambition as well when the ball did get, Gloucester's main ambition was to have 80 minutes of scrummages by the look of it. But when they did actually open up and play, they played like they do, especially in the last third of the game where they're at their most dangerous, as we see year in, year out. But no, I think I can forgive to a degree some of the mishandling that we saw from Saracens due to adventure and cold fingers more than anything else. I wouldn't have said it was any worse than I've seen this season. It's just that the occasion appeared more important.
It's interesting what you said about Gloucester trying to scrum for 80 minutes. I took my 4-year-old grandson for the first time. He was sitting next to me, and I was hoping there was going to be a load of action. Luckily, he seemed to be a bit fascinated by the scrum, so that was just as well. But you are right about the conditions, because when passes were parallel with me, with where we were sitting, not far from the halfway line, with that wind blowing, they were actually bananaing away from the player that they were intended for. So perhaps I was being a bit harsh.
Yeah, I think it definitely was a case of both teams having to fight the weather as well as the other team. You know, and you couldn't tell at points which way the wind was going. It would go one way, it'd go the other way. And even when Gloucester had the wind with them, they kicked the ball out on the full. So actually, it's just bad conditions, and hopefully that now we're going into spring and then into summer, it will clear up and it won't be quite so bad.
Let's hope so, and let's hope we're all warmer. Number 3, Tori Sellers, when she came on, as ever, had a great game, but Liz Apps had to go off early after proving again, as if we didn't know, what an amazing attacking weapon she is. It's that 7 side to her game. Give her the ball in a bit of space near the line, and 99 times out of 100, she'll score. And hopefully, if we're in the final, we won't lose her so early.
I'm glad you said if we're in the final, because you said it as a done deal earlier on, and I would have put another block to get in there as being overconfident. But I think it was an unintentional slip on your part. With Liv, the fact she's getting injured actually is concerning her slightly. I spoke to her after the game. She failed her in match HIA, obviously, because she didn't come back. There'll be another one, and we'll wait to see. I mean, if she doesn't reappear, we'll know that there's an issue. But it's a delicate business. I don't think there's an issue about whether she wants to play for Saracens or not. It's whether she wants to play 15s or not. But if she keeps getting knocked about, and a bit like Charlie Bracken, I think she's a bit too brave for her own good playing position at times, and she puts herself in danger because of her exuberance and perhaps her inexperience of how many bodies she's got to actually get past and through in the 15s game. Fact is, she was okay afterwards, but she was a little bit down in the mouth about the fact that she's starting to pick up these knocks.
That's a shame, isn't it? Because it would be great to retain her. And as we've discussed before, if she's going to be out for the next game, for instance, if the HIA goes on that long, the cupboard's a bit bare, isn't it?
We need to look at if we're not possibly getting Ella back this season, because actually there's not that many games left, then who can play scrum half if Liv gets injured? Because we don't want to just rely on Tori. As good as she is, she can't play 80 minutes week in, week out. And then there's the risk she gets injured as well. So it's actually looking at, do we start trying to train immediately with Dougal at scrum half, which he's played a few times before, and actually where is our backup so that if Liv gets injured again or is out for multiple games, who is covering scrum half so that we're not almost left in the dark when Tori gets injured or when she needs a rest?
We've got 2 weeks until the next game, haven't we? So I would imagine in that 2 weeks, Amelia McDougall should, you'd hope, be training, doing some scrum half training, because I don't know who else is there, as you've just said. Number 4, item number 4, David. The one, the one that we're going for.
I thought I was going to get this one. Yeah, go on.
Well, I hate complaining about refs. I find it a very boring subject normally. They have a hard job. And often during a game, you think, oh, God, the ref's against us. You get home, you watch the replay, and you see that more often than not, they're right. I haven't seen a replay of this game, but was our discipline really that bad? It didn't seem like it looking at the game. Were we really that offside that much when Gloucester weren't?
Yeah, I haven't seen a replay of the game either. I'm just going to put some in context here. I had to write a Facebook report for the Saracen Supporters Association, which has been mentioned many times on here before, where I was very even-handed in my comments and very, very careful, particularly about the subject of refereeing, mainly because I went to 4 or 5 people and kept writing redrafts of the thing before we found an acceptable version of it, because I was very sore when I came away from that. I'm going to tell you for why. No, I don't believe we're that ill-disciplined. We are ill-disciplined to a degree, and I'll come back to that, but not that ill-disciplined. I'm going to actually make some comments of personal nature, from a personal point of view, about Sarah Cox, MBE, a referee I had so much time for. When I say had, that went right up to the first COVID Premier 15s final between Saracens and Harlequins, which was the first time in 3 attempts that Quins beat us in one of those finals. The way that was refereed, there seemed to be a certain amount of feeling, particularly between her and the Cleals. And we picked up a certain amount with Marley Packer between her. Now, we know what the Cleals can be like. We know that they can be quite vociferous. We know that Marley is in your face. And there were times when she was standing next to the referee today when she shouldn't have been. It should have been Zoe or May, because they're the co-captains of this particular team. Lottie's not a captain anymore. She knows how to stand out the way and stay out of it. So there are certain mitigating factors. That game, things got so bad. Bryony Cleal was removed from that game after 20 minutes in order to prevent her getting sent off, because she was getting so incensed. That was her last game for Saracens before she was sent off to Wasps, and she made her way back to us, thank goodness, and ended her Saracens career in very good circumstances. It would have been a crying shame if it had ended like that. At the end of the game, I remember feeling very disillusioned by the refereeing display I'd seen, and also by Sarah's rather strange reaction. She seemed enormously pleased with herself afterwards, unreasonably so. And I saw something similar again today. So I think there is a certain amount of feeling between Saracens and Sarah Cox. I think there's a certain amount of feeling between her and certain of our players. Now, it's very difficult for me to sit here and question a referee's objectivity in terms of the laws. I'm sure she applies them exactly as she sees them. Whether or not you can be affected by the way you feel about something or people in general, particularly if they're rattling away at you on a particular day, I wonder. She seemed very anxious to send Marley off. Marley kind of admitted she deliberately knocked that on, but I think there was some mention of offside. Nobody on the field apart from Mo Hunt, she was offside. And the other thing was, here's where I have to be very careful, all right? A player who will remain nameless, and I've said this before, don't try and find out, I'm not going to tell you. There was actually more than one player, but the words slightly differed. So you've got to be a bit careful. It was questioned of Sarah Cox on the field, how come it is that Mo Hunt can say what she likes and we can't say anything? And she said it's objectivity from her and slander from you. Now, if those were the actual words used, and I wasn't there and this is hearsay, if she said that, I'd be all for her never refereeing another game of rugby, quite frankly, which might sound a bit harsh. If that's the level this has got to, and this is the first women's game she's done in ages, by the way, I think it might even be the first one of the season. So whether or not she felt slightly denuded by coming back to women's rugby after having done so much men's rugby or whatever it was. I will also say that one of the Gloucester coaches went to embrace her after the game, and she very wisely, I think, backed off and moved away from that. But the fact that a member of the Gloucester coaching team felt disposed to embrace the referee left me with a very bad taste in my mouth.
It was extremely puzzling, really, really puzzling and amazing. I mean, we talked about items 1 to 3 that were pretty massive for Saracens to overcome, but to overcome that level of penalty giving against you and still be within one score of a very, very good team that's beaten you was fantastic, really. And I don't know what power the club have got, but if Sarah Cox was to be chosen for a final that we were playing against Gloucester, then I'd be moving, if it's possible, heaven and earth to get that overturned.
Yeah, you can put in a representation, and I would say she's a very good candidate for one of the 3 spots. Now, I've had problems with her doing the line for Saracens in men's games, because I'm afraid that both our men and our women have rubbed her up the wrong way, one way or the other. She refereed the men when we were in the championship, and she didn't walk away greatly pleased with the responses she got from the men either. So some of this is of our own making, I think. But after that particular final, one performance on the line with the men against Leicester Tigers and certain things that she managed to talk the particular referee into that day, and this particular game today, if I was the Saracens management, I would move heaven and earth not to have her in a final in any capacity.
Well, I hope we don't. Just very briefly, harking back to England, there's been some question marks about Marrow's captaincy. I thought his captaincy in the way that he managed the ref on Saturday was first class. But just coming back to the women, as I said, it was an amazing performance, I think, to lose so narrowly. It's interesting what you say about Marley admitting that she deliberately knocked the ball down, because it was her yellow card that really, combined with Julia Macaulay being on the floor, so we were down to 13 people when Gloucester scored the winning try.
A lot of people say, well, you should have actually having 13 people against 15 when you've got against a team that's so dominant as Gloucester, it's going to be very hard to stop the try. And actually the fact that we were within an unconverted try of drawing and actually right up until the end kept the pressure on. Yes, we probably made it harder for ourselves with handling errors, but actually the fact that right till the end we could have won the game or at least drawn actually is really positive, especially considering what happened when we went to Kingsholm in October. So saying that, yes, we lost, but actually the defensive effort we put up across the whole game that kept it such a tight match is really positive moving forward.
Yeah, but for those cold fingers at the end, we could easily have scored. One of the reasons that we stayed in the game was just some amazing defence.
Yeah, and this team has defended marvellously all year, I think, all season. And so did the cup team. That was the thing that won them that particular trophy, because they could open up a lead and then it was like an impenetrable wall after that. I mean, they might sort of give it up in the last 2 minutes with a nice handy lead on the board. But whatever is happening in Saracens organisationally in defence, unlike the men, it seems that any amount or different selection of women can play it. And that used to be what you could say about Saracens men. But I think now that mantle has passed to the women. So whatever system they're using or whatever coaching or help they're getting, it seems to me that all the players can play it.
That is completely right, because it reminded me of, say, 2015 Saracens men. Well, you used to watch them defend and actually take the team backwards towards their line with their defence. To watch the women do that against a team like Gloucester was just fantastic.
Across the season, we've had one of the best defences in the league. There's been loads of high-scoring games and draws across the league. So actually, yes, we lost, but we've still got a really good defensive team. And it doesn't matter who we pick to play. They can all step up and put in that defensive performance, which ultimately will be really important to getting that home semi-final and hopefully going on to win the final.
And the other reason why we managed to put up such a competitive performance in the face of all the obstacles we did face was some great tries. And some great tries to break up the Gloucester scrummaging. We mentioned Liv Apps before and her ability to convert when she gets any space near the line. But that Emma Hardy try, as a result of an amazing break and kick by Just Breach, was just a joy to behold, David.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I see people complaining about centres in the men's team with some justification. But what price Emma Hardy, Sydney Gregson, Sophie Bridger? I mean, that's sheer class. And Emma, the one non-international out of the three, she never looks out of place, does she? And you talked about the defence. Her defence is phenomenal. And as good as a defender as Sid is, I'm not even sure that she defends as well as Emma Hardy does. Emma Hardy is the ultimate hard yards girl. She's the sort of player you'd want. She's the sort of back equivalent of Jackson Ray, the non-international who turns up and plays consistently well every week, and you throw her into whatever situation, she delivers all the time. I'm a big, in case you haven't realised it already, I'm a big, big Emma Hardy fan. I used to sponsor Sharifa Casolo, who remembered her from Loughborough days. When we signed Emma Hardy, she said, don't think that you're signing her as ballast or reserve. She'll be pushing for a first team spot and she'll justify herself very, very easily. Shaz was right.
The centres that we have for the women, week in, week out, tough as nails, brilliant going forward. Okay, we'll take another quick break and then we'll come back and very briefly look forward to the return of the men next week.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And as we said, the Prem returns next week and we have a nice, easy match away at Bath. David, I can't remember how many have bought tickets out of our fan base to go, presumably the super rich element of our travelling fans.
Well, our relatively cheap seats were £99 plus £2. You know, they sort of go up and up after that. I didn't have the link for that long for that, so I think we only shifted about 20 odd. But I've been watching that particular area fill up since we advertised where we were. So, you know, it could be anywhere between 50 and 150. I've absolutely no idea. Probably about 80 to 100, I would hope.
Well, that's pretty good going, isn't it, at those prices? As you say, it's Bath benefit from the joy of an excess of demand over supply in their small ground, and boy, do they milk it. It's impossible to know where we stand, isn't it, coming back? I imagine the England contingent, I think we have to rest them for 2 games, don't we? So I would imagine that this might be one of them. They could probably do with a rest this week coming up after the Six Nations that's been played over a more intense period. But which Saracens are going to turn up?
Definitely resting at least our England contingent, and then they're ready to go for the showdown the week after, especially because it's a Friday night game. It's a short turnaround anyway. But actually, I think some of the younger players, giving them a chance to play in the Prem and get some medals, but also having players who weren't necessarily involved in the Cup campaign but who also weren't involved internationally, come back, give them a chance to actually get a run around, get out on the pitch and start kind of building towards the end of the season.
I was wrongly, I think, with hindsight, a little bit impatient that we weren't playing more younger players earlier on in the season without realising how many of them were actually out injured. But I assume that, apart from Charlie Bracken, Max Eek is probably still injured, I guess, but there could be a lot of contenders to come in and start really getting more time. I guess the question is, should they?
Oh, gosh, I got this one before, didn't I? And I got the composition of the team completely wrong, unsurprisingly. Look, I was at Bath when we sent a bunch of lads to play their A-team. I mean, apart from the fact that Liam Williams got a red card in about the first 15 minutes and everything possible went wrong. I mean, we lost the game in the first 15 minutes and it was an absolute cakewalk after that. We just watching try after try going to the point where I was getting apologies from the locals who were getting quite embarrassed by it. And yeah, we had a player sent off as well. We had 2 players sent off in that game, if I'm not mistaken. What do we do about it? Send the best team we've got available while resting the internationals. Send your next best team. I mean, at the end of the day, our opponents in the next 2 league games have got to contend with the same thing. I mean, look at what Saints have got to consider. Yeah, what do they bring to Tottenham Hotspur, for example? So I wouldn't have said that this is a problem unique to us. Winning at the Rec is never easy at the best of times, particularly on a Friday night there. So yeah, I'd say they might let the odd international play, but is it worth it really? I honestly don't know. This is one that I honestly wouldn't want to hang my hat on, but we've got to actually make some use of these players within the confines of the international minutes. I mean, can't you divide it by having them on the bench as well and that sort of thing? I seem to remember that's been done in the past, so they play like half a game or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There was that match against Toulon, wasn't there, in the European Cup, when we actually started really well and went into a lead. And what made the difference was the fact that we didn't have a strong bench, where, of course, being French, they really did. But David makes a really good point there, though, Alex, that you don't want to send too inexperienced a team to Bath and watch them get walloped in the way that we have been in the past and possibly dent their confidence.
Yeah, but I think also we've got plenty of people who weren't involved in Six Nations. You think people like Fergus Burke, Theo Dan, didn't have really any time for England. So actually, could he come back and be on the bench and come back in? There are plenty of players who have that experience who actually weren't involved in the Six Nations, who can then come in, bring that experience, bring the confidence that maybe the younger players need, and actually give them experience whilst also not crushing their confidence.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Theo Dan will definitely play because he's allowed to. I don't think he had any minutes for England, did he? I'm not sure. And the Argentinians haven't been busy. Theo McFarland hasn't been busy. So it's going to be another team that on paper is going to look really good, and hopefully they're going to be really motivated and we'll see the Toulouse team turn up, not the Glasgow one.
Well, we can always hope, can't we? Well, I've paid me 99 quid plus 2 quid. I mean, I suppose I'm sort of obliged to go down as I have to write about these games. I'm not going out there glowing with confidence. I'm pleased that I'm only paying 50 quid for the round of 16 game at Bath, but then the EPCR actually dictate the price of that, not Bath. So it just shows you that must have really stuck in their craw, because they were supposed to sell those for 40 and they managed to squeeze it up to 50. So we'll be paying £50 for the £99 seats in very short order in the future because an outside agency insisted upon it.
Good to see someone tell Bath they can't charge those prices, because they don't charge them to their own fans, do they?
Oh, yes, they do.
Do they? Oh, well.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, the same. The Bath fans sitting in EH will be paying 99 plus 2, the same as us. There's no concessions. It's a very expensive place to watch rugby, but then it's a fairly wealthy part of the country. A bit like Quins.
It is. And when they're in a final at Twickenham, they they fill half the ground, and all those people are trying to get in it every week. You don't have to be a rocket science to know why the prices are so high. It makes me feel quite good because I'm normally crying when my season ticket comes up for renewal, even though it's a very good seat, but they're even making my seat look cheap. Okay, shall we leave it there for this week? Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for David and Alex for joining me on a Sunday evening so that I have time to edit the show before it goes out on Wednesday. And we will see you next week.
This is the Fezcast.